Oopsies from the last episode. Correction number 1. Pokemon that require level up to evolve can in fact evolve at level 100 by the use of a rare candy. The only exception I can think of may be Inkay. Thanks Bart. Correction number 2. I tried to test if your Pokemon can still evolve right after fainting in a battle, as Jake Collin claimed in a comment on the last video, but after 40 minutes of testing, I could not find a definitive answer. Another thing to mention is that I'll not go into detail on game-specific features in general videos like these. There may be some examples throughout the series to showcase how some deeper game mechanics work, but only to illustrate a point. Detailed videos on how to EV train using Pokejobs is for example its own video, rather than it being inside the general video on how to EV train. The reason being that I want these videos to be valuable even in a couple years from now, as future games have different features, while the fundamentals stay the same. At last, I would like to say thank you to everyone who commented on the last episode. There are a lot of details to get right in these videos, and it is awesome to get some help along the way if I skip important details or presenting inaccurate information. There are 6 videos planned for the first part of my Pokemon Explained series. These take a while to make, but if you find my videos helpful and enjoyable, you can subscribe to the channel to stay up to date as new videos are published. The concept of Pokemon base stats is great when comparing the strengths and weaknesses of different Pokemon. One great advantage that comes from understanding base stats is that you can compare the potential of 2 different species of Pokemon regardless of their level, IVs, EVs, or nature. The base stats of a Pokemon is the main ingredient that goes into the general calculation of the numbers a Pokemon displays in its summary. The HP, attack, defense, special attack, special defense, and speed all have a specific base stat number depending on which species of Pokemon we're talking about. The significance of these numbers are only as a measurement of comparison when looking at 2 Pokemon. An example can be Charizard. If we look up Charizard in an online encyclopedia, we'll find the following base stats. HP is 78, attack is 84, defense is 78, and so on. If you add up all the base stats of Charizard, you'll get the number 534, which is generally referred to as the base stat total, or BST for short. Typically, you'll find that strong Pokemon have a base stat total of around 450 to 600. The base stats of a Pokemon is set by the code in the game, just like other information such as a Pokemon's typing or which moves it learns through level up. It is Game Freak who determines these stats for the game and may only in some cases be changed in between generations of Pokemon games. But let's go back to our example with Charizard. In the right hand side of this table, you'll see a column called Range. As I have explained earlier, the base stat is only one of many ingredients that go into the end result of the stats shown in a Pokemon summary. Competitive battles happen at level 50, and level 100 is the highest level a Pokemon can be, and thus also the strongest. These are just examples of the range a given Pokemon can have for a specific stat at a given level. In the text below, it says that the minimum stats are calculated with individual values of 0, and effort values at 0, and with a hindering nature if possible. Pokemon natures are covered in its own video, but for now, the only thing you need to know is that natures only affect 2 or 0 stats at a time, and that the HP is never impacted. At level 50, we can see that the HP of the weakest Charizard possible would have 138 HP stat points. In comparison, the strongest Charizard possible at level 50 would have 185 HP stat points. As you can see here, the HP base stat of these 2 Charizard is the same, 78, which determines the range. But where a Pokemon is in this range is determined by its IVs, EVs, and nature in combination, which is why one Charizard can have 138 HP and another can have 185. Base stats determine the potential of a species of a Pokemon as a whole, all Charizards for example, while level, IVs, EVs, and nature combined determine which of all Charizards are the strongest. Base stats offer an essential tool for competitive players, especially when looking at speed tiers. In battle, Which Pokemon that gets to move first is dependent on which of the Pokemon has the highest speed stat. Priority moves may override who gets to move first, but as a rule, the fastest Pokemon hits first. So then, how do we determine which Pokemon is the fastest? For this next example, let's look at the base stats of Greninja and compare them to those of Charizard. Charizard has a base speed stat of 100, while Greninja has a base speed stat of 122. We can see that the range of Charizard's speed at level 50 is between 94 at worst and 167 at best, and that the range of Greninja's speed at level 50 is between 114 at worst and 191 at best. What you will notice here is that there is some significant overlap between the two Pokemon. At the extremes, the slowest possible Charizard will always be slower than any Greninja, and the fastest possible Greninja is always faster than any Charizard. However, if you have a relatively fast Charizard, i.e. its speed stat is in the upper part of its range, and a relatively slow Greninja, i.e. its speed stat is in the lower part of its range, then the Charizard may be faster than the Greninja, even though its base stat is lower. The stats in a Pokemon's summary are put together by a Pokemon's level, base stats, which depend on the species of Pokemon, individual values, a Pokemon's individual potential, effort values, strength gained from training, and its nature. In addition to the numbers you see in a Pokemon summary, these will further be affected by abilities, moves, and items during battle, but this effect is temporary. This is why, as you've seen in the beginning of my videos, that there are 6 videos planned for part 1. Combined, these 6 video topics give you the fundamentals for understanding Pokemon stats. In later parts of my Pokemon Explained series, I'll go over battling, breeding, training, strategy, and individual Pokemon movesets. Base stats is something that need a little bit of time to fully ripen. My recommendation is to look up the base stats of your favorite Pokemon, and if you have any Pokemon at level 50 or level 100 in your game, try to see if your Pokemon is at the low or the high range at this level. Understanding base stats can also materialize the change a Pokemon goes through when evolving. It's the base stats that change that makes a Pokemon stronger as it evolves into a higher stage. You can see this with Charmander as it evolves into Charmeleon, and with Charmeleon as it evolves into Charizard. A special thank you goes to Shelby, Flipside, Liquid Divinity, Jonathan, Monoxide, Michael, Select, and Bart for supporting my work over on patreon.com/Nerth. If you found this video enjoyable or helpful in any way, there are more videos like this in the Pokemon Explained playlist, which you can find on the screen right now. Thank you for watching.